Welcome in to No Pun Intended, presented by Club Fantasy. I am not Joe Zolo. It is not another IDP show, though, so don't be worried about that. We have a special guest host, but I'm going to wait until after the intro so you can see who that is. But we are finally jumping in to our Look Inside series. If you paid attention last year, that is where we go 3 teams every week leading up to our Women of Fantasy shows later on in the summer. But we're going to look at every single team, try to give you the sleepers, the bust. We have great guests all summer long, including our very first guest, first time on the show, Heath Cummings from CBS Fantasy. It is going to be a wonderful show. Let's jump into it.
What's going on, everybody? Welcome into No Pun Intended, presented by Club Fantasy. I'm your host tonight, Hutchinson Brown. You know, Joe is not here, slacking off once again. So, Ryan.
What Joe does, you know, it's starting the summer and baseball season, all that good stuff. So.
Exactly. This is where we got Hutch last year. We're just keeping tradition alive. So,
yeah, Ryan Joshua have called me in the game. Sorry, Ryan Joshua have called me in to host. So tonight we've got a very special group. Ryan Weiss at the Fantasy 5 on Twitter, Joshua Hudson at the One Hudsonian on Twitter, and we've got Heath Cummings at Heath Cummings SSR on Twitter, and you can find me on Twitter at TYFMNFL. This is a very exciting group, and let's get right into it. This is gonna be fun.
I'm excited.
Well, first let's greet our guest, Heath. Thank you
Heath.
so much. I like to tell this story because it's something that I think really endears Heath and people with larger stature in the fantasy community. Heath, you put out a tweet just as like the season was wrapping up that said, you know what, I want to do more guest spots. I don't care how big your show is. Send me a DM. And you and I had messed up schedules for the entire 3-month period. And then I love that there was one time where you hadn't got back to me and you apologized and you're like, you know what, we're going to make this next one work. And so I'm so happy to have you on. You do such a great job on Twitter. We just did a mock draft together with your CBS article not too long ago as well. So I love your willingness to reach out to the fantasy community. It's really appreciated. So,
well, thank you. And thank you for having me on. It's this is my favorite thing that I get to do as a part of this job, podcasting, because really you're just sitting around talking about fantasy football for however long. And so I've gotten to the point in season now and really into August and maybe part of July where I just can't do any guest spots at all. So we get to January. I like to do as many of these as I can, and I'm looking forward to it.
We're happy to
appreciate you being so willing to hop on with us and our tiny little podcast. So
yes. All right, Hutch, now you can move the show along.
Sorry about that, guys. I try to move on too fast. But it's team preview season. Joe was a late scratch, so I'm coming in today to fill in for him for a host. And here to help us kick off our annual A Look Inside series, we've got Heath Cummings, got Joshua Hudson, Ryan Weiss. First up, we got the Jacksonville Jaguars. Last year record, they were 3-14. They've got a new coach now. They got Doug Peterson, formerly of the Philadelphia Eagles, and new offense, Peterson and Press Taylor as an offensive coordinator. Players with the most fantasy upside, Josh has Travis Etienne, Ryan has Evan Ingram, and player who is the biggest trap this year for fantasy managers, Josh has James Robinson, and Ryan also has James Robinson. So now we've got some questions for Heath here for the Jaguars. Heath, if there's one player on this team you have to leave your draft with, it's who?
Well, first, there's not. It's Jacksonville Jaguars. And so, I put a name down and we'll talk about a guy, and it'll be fun because both these guys just said he's a trap. But no, it's you guys had me on, and the punishment for missing you for 4 months was
that you got the worst teams.
the absolute worst teams.
See, you got to understand our methodology here. Okay.
We
try to bring on big guests every single summer because, you know, it's just that's what makes talking about fantasy fun, right?
Yeah.
Well, when you talk about the worst teams in the league,
if you
don't have the biggest of the big guests, nobody's going to tune in.
Exactly.
That's a really good strategy. Actually, it sucks for me, but it's a great.
This is
way
what
for you
makes it
guys to-
entertaining because now we get to throw shit at a wall and see what sticks.
That's really smart. I'm terrified of this offense, and mostly I'm terrified for Trevor Lawrence. And maybe a year of maturity, but the problem is I think that a lot of times we see that big leap for quarterbacks from their first year to their second year because they've got a full NFL season of learning under their belt. I don't know that Trevor Lawrence learned anything at all last year. He learned a lot of things that, like, hopefully I don't ever see that again. And no, I don't want to do that. But so I'm worried about the offense. So I don't want to draft anybody very early. But I am intrigued by James Robinson. It might be a little bit of wish casting on the fact that, Cam Akers got back and we've seen Marlon Mack play after the Achilles. And I have this dream that the Achilles is going to become like the new ACL.
Okay.
And so, it takes 9 months. It takes a year. Some guys, it takes 15 to 18 months before they're all the way back. But pretty much everybody comes back from it. Now, maybe it won't be. That's what I'm hoping for. And so I do think if Robinson is ready for the start of the season, he will be the best Jacksonville running back for as long as he's healthy.
Wow. Ballsy call.
Yeah, I was going to say that's.
Well, your story about Trevor Lawrence, about maybe not learning anything last year, that's kind of been my running joke with Travis Etienne, is maybe not being on this team last year was the greatest thing that could have possibly
that was my favorite quote from this offseason. He's like, man, if I was going to miss a year.
That was the quote from any NFL player or reporter this offseason. When he was in that press conference and he said this was the season to miss, that was perfect.
My concern with James Robinson, and it's right now, the ADP is all over the place. I feel like he's almost being drafted as if ETN is his only issue, and it's not the Achilles. And I went and I looked at Cam Akers' numbers, and here's the thing. I last year was incorrectly a J-Rob hater, and I do not hate J-Rob at all. Watching this guy play, I love everything about his game. Cam Akers did come back very quickly. He only averaged 2.4 yards per carry since he came back on 75 carries. Marlon Mack was like healthy scratches last year, only appeared in 6 games and only received 28 carries. I don't know that those guys are still the perfect case study for like, I'm enthusiastic about James Robinson. And then the other issue is, and this is just like new article bias, I researched Travis Etienne for the article for this show, and so now I'm like all in on Travis Etienne because that's just how it works when you research a guy too much.
Well, this is going to work perfect because people are going to get the positive and the negative for both James Robinson and Travis.
Exactly, because I'm not going to lie, my heart completely sunk when I did the show sheet. Me and Josh have talked about this before. I tend to not get nervous when we have big guests at all, but you are the first guest to ever beat me to the show sheet. And we were the opposite on every pick. And I'm like, this is not going to come out well for me.
Exactly.
That's awesome.
That's great. I'm with you, Ryan, on Robinson. The whole thing with me, Achilles is still, there is no true case study for it. Like Cam Robinson being as young as he is, athletic as he is, the profile that he had, I'm still surprised that he came back in under 6 months. But again, he was not effective. And that's a good Los Angeles Rams offensive line.
I say you
this Jaguars offensive line.
You merged them. You said Cam Robinson, but who is like an offensive tackle.
Well, Cam Robinson may be a left tackle here with the Jaguars.
Exactly.
Not very good and doesn't deserve the extension that he got. So that's a great
I promise you, Josh, I was like, when the hell did Cam Robinson tear his Achilles? Like, I'm trying to remember. So.
Exactly.
But the Rams have a good offensive line. Cam Akers didn't perform very well behind it. The Jaguars have a shit offensive line.
James Robinson was awesome behind it.
Yeah,
he was. Yeah. Absolutely, he was. He just knows how to run. But now when you have those limitations and you're thinking about that Achilles injury, it just, to me, it's very different than a knee. And like being somebody that grew up playing baseball and a catcher, I've had knee issues my entire life. I don't have the same type of limp as when I felt a twinge in my Achilles. That is what will throw you off in a stride, in my personal opinion. So it worries me a little bit. The thing with Travis Etienne that I love is because we've seen backs like this in a Doug Peterson offense. Miles Sanders was awesome in that offense his first 2 years in the league. And when I look at where these guys are going at ADP, Travis Etienne right now is RB 26. That's RB3 that legitimately has top 15 potential. When you look at the running backs between 25 and 36 at current ADP, 4 of them stand out to me as like top 15 potential. And one of them is Travis Etienne.
So what do you think? What do you think the early down upside is for Etienne? Because I think that might be where the disconnect is. There hasn't really been anybody who's talked about within the Jacksonville Jaguars who's talked about Etienne as not even a workhorse running back, but like a 1A running back. They've talked about him more like a gadget type player.
No, he definitely will. I don't see him as that. Even Miles Sanders wasn't. I mean, Sanders had, I think it was like 160 and then bumped up to like 180 rushes within his first 2 years. He did it through the passing game. Like his first year, he had 63 targets. I believe the next year he had 54. It's just the second year was where it tanked off because he was so bad at catching the football. But he had 50 receptions in that rookie year. And that's the type of versatility that Doug Peterson wants. The biggest difference to me between the two, Travis Etienne knows how to score touchdowns. If I'm not mistaken, he has the ACC record for touchdowns among running backs in college. So that's
I don't know how many touchdowns Miles Sanders scored in college.
Well, he only played one full year, really, because he had Saquon Barkley in front of him.
He had Saquon Barkley. Yeah,
so I like the upside there when it comes to Etienne versus Robinson. And again, you're looking at 2 very different injuries. Also, there really hasn't been a legit comeback from a Liz Frank surgery. Now, sprains, yes. The surgeries, I think you're going all the way back to like Jimmy Smith at wide receiver, who actually was able to bounce back pretty.
Didn't Julio get the surgery?
Julio had a Jones fracture.
Oh, okay. I thought
not a Liz Frank.
Okay. Yeah, Julio.
So, there's definitely some. I mean, and again, you're looking at 2 very different case studies because of 2 very different injuries. This whole thing could blow apart, and the real running back you want is Snoop Connor, the rookie.
The answer might just be don't.
Oh,
that's the most likely answer. Like, just don't.
This offense could just be a dumpster fire all over again. I mean, you guys were saying it repeatedly.
We're going to see Laviska Shenault getting carries like Debo in that backfield.
Yeah.
I was going to say, I think he hit the nail on the head, and it speaks to my bias all over the place. Running backs who I think are going to be involved in the passing game are instantly the James White effect. They just get an insane bump up for me in everything I do.
Yeah.
And so I think that's really where I'm leaning, to where I want James Robinson to be healthy for football. I just think it's good for football. He's such a damn good running back. But even if he is, I'm not as scared off of ETN. Now, I'll admit where he's going right now with a healthy James Robinson is entirely too high. So don't is probably the right answer. But Jacksonville's not going to win games. They're going to throw the ball. And if Trevor Lawrence doesn't have more time to throw it, those passes are going to Travis Etienne.
Yeah, I mean, like
Ingram.
I mean, the Jacksonville Jaguars did bring in a lot of receivers and weapons this offseason, but none of them are going to take are worthy of a crazy target load. I mean, Christian Kirk, like Zay Jones, like Laviska Shenault, Evan Ingram, like these guys are not like we can say that Trevor Lawrence really got a lot of help this offseason, but none of them are like worthy of like a pure dominant receiving roles. They're going to need help at receiver, and Travis Etienne could absolutely be there.
2 things. None of them are worthy. I agree with that section for sure. Of it's just I don't even know that he got a lot of help.
That's what I was saying. Or call them weapons.
Yeah.
So the target share opportunities there. I do think that like probably a third of the targets are going to tight ends. I'm not 100%.
Doug Peterson offense, yeah.
Right. I'm not 100% sure that Evan Ingram's going to be better than Dan Arnold. But I think those guys will be in similar areas. Now, he probably starts off as the number 1 tight end, but I think Dan Arnold might just be better than him.
The last 3 years in Philadelphia with Doug Peterson as the play caller, in 2018, over 35% of the targets went to tight end, 38% in 2019, and just over 28% in 2020. Now, keep in mind, in 2018, 2019, Philly didn't – I mean, really all 3 of those years, they didn't have a legit number 1 wide receiver because Alshon was consistently hurt. But those first 2 years, 2018, 19, those were like Zach Ertz 120-plus targets.
Yeah. Why didn't they just go get like O.J. Howard and like for the first time ever, let's just see if we throw the ball to O.J. Howard 100 times what happens?
Yeah.
Because everybody's it kind of looks like he'd be awesome. We've seen what happens if you throw it to Evan Ingram 100 times.
Yeah.
He drops 40 of them.
50 of them.
50 of them.
It's not even the drops because I do think for most players, drops don't matter, except I think Evan Ingram, the team stopped wanting to throw to him as much because of it. So then it does matter. But it's the fact that his ADOT consistently kept getting closer to the line of scrimmage.
Yep.
And yet his yak was not increasing at all. If you're going to be catching passes close to the line of scrimmage like Debo, then you need to be making guys miss and doing things after the catch. And he was just running for it. It was Jason Witten.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, that's more of a product of Jason Garrett because that was the offense.
Yeah.
Well, Jason Garrett can't run afterward. That's still on Evan Ingram. So you got to do something after you catch the ball. No, it's very interesting because all the people hyping Ingram up right now, I'm like, the guy has been above 60 targets every year he's been in the league. He's been relevant one of those years, his rookie year. Just might not be there.
Now I want to clarify because I was on the bad side of ETN, the good side of James Robinson. I'm still drafting Travis Etienne ahead of James Robinson right now.
Okay.
I just like Robinson at cost more than Etienne at cost.
And that makes perfect sense.
But I would still take Etienne over Robinson. I'm not trying to get anybody to do that.
I want to throw something at you because normally the answer is no. And I think with the offense, it remains no. Robinson is pupped. He's not draftable, right? Missing 6 weeks. You just let him slide through the draft and see what happens, or?
Yeah. Well, I think it depends.
If you have an IR and
my leagues, I'm not taking away IR spots ever. I love them, and I want people to have them. So if you're in a league with IR spots, then I probably would use the 12th or 13th round pick on Robinson, stash him, and then pick somebody up week 1 because I'd rather have him.
Go ahead. Right now, according to Underdog, he's going at after pick 150. He's going at 151. He's going at 151. According to Underdog.
He's 98 on Fantasy Pros, but Fantasy Pros is combined of a whole bunch of different sites. So
I'm looking at Underdog. Underdog is
150 that's an insanely great price for James Robinson. Let's be clear.
Yeah. Usually in drafts, I see him going earlier than 150, but they have Travis Etienne going at 56 too. So that's interesting.
Fifth round is where I feel fair with Travis Etienne.
I've got to Etienne at 65. So I don't like 56, but I'm not as far off on him. I just think if I have a choice between, and even if it's a little earlier, round 11 or 12 on James Robinson or round 5 on Etienne, I'd rather use the 11 or 12 pick if I'm taking a Jacksonville running back.
Yeah. That makes a lot of sense.
So we talked about Travis Etienne. We talked about James Robinson in that little battle there. But Heath, who is the rookie to care about for dynasty purposes for the Jacksonville Jaguars?
Again, don't. But it's probably the running back that they drafted who's playing behind the guy with the bad foot and the guy coming off the Achilles surgery.
Yeah.
I'm going to go with Snoop Connor. I certainly wouldn't do it before round 3, and I'd rather at round 4 of a rookie draft. But he's the only one, and there is some chance that you just get some stupid free production in year 1 out of him, and then maybe you can even sell him for a second round pick next year.
I mean, that's what we got from James Robinson.
Yeah,
right. Exactly what we got from James Robinson. No one expected him to go off, and then guys in front of him got injured, and there was just nobody left, and he just stepped up and took it. So let's talk about Joe's biggest sleeper based on current ADP. He likes Christian Kirk, and basically what he put here is that no one pays him $84 million to be a wide receiver 4 in ADP. He thinks he's going a little low. So time to play Would You Rather. Josh can read off players through ADP.
I'm going to point something out before we get into this. As I was doing some research for our projections, I started looking at slot targets for the teams. And when you look at Doug Peterson teams from, again, we'll look at 2018, 2019, 2020 with Philadelphia. He targeted the slot over 31% each of those years.
Do you remember what you said the tight end target rate was?
It's like 35,
almost the same.
right?
35.
Yeah.
I just wonder how many of those slot targets.
Over 38.
Yeah. Or actually,
I think a lot of those slot targets are tight ends.
Yeah,
not
you have
all
to
of them
wonder.
were.
Not all of them, but
Yeah,
a lot
not
of
all
them
of them were. I mean, you're still looking at guys like Nelson Aguilar. You were looking at Jordan Matthews. I mean, those are guys that were, living out of the slot in those offenses.
Yeah,
but again, that can obviously benefit Evan Ingram, which I think it can if he can catch the football. But when you go out and you pay $18 million a year for Christian Kirk, who ran 75% of his targets out of the slot and was tied for first among eligible receivers in catch percentage from the slot, he's going to get the football because that's where this offense is going to throw to. They're throwing to the slot. So, but all right. So Christian Kirk currently on Fantasy Pros, wide receiver 42. We'll look at, all right, we'll say like the 5 guys ahead of him, the 5 guys after him. Wide receiver 37, Brandon Ayuk. Who would you rather have, Kirk or Ayuk? Heath.
I might be the low guy in the industry on both of these guys, but I will go with Kirk.
Ryan.
Kirk.
Hutch.
Yeah, I'll take Kirk. The upside for Ayuk to be the number 1 receiver on his team is not there.
Yeah, as long as Debo's there, yeah. I love Ayuk, but give me Kirk. 38 is Juju. Heath. Juju or Kirk?
Yeah, I'm a big Juju guy, so I'm going Juju.
I feel so much better now because I am also a big Juju guy, so I'm not going to disagree with Heath on everything on this show. So Juju for sure, not even close.
Hutch.
Yeah, I'll take Juju here. The offense is just so much better, a lot more. I mean, Patrick Mahomes makes fantasy receivers relevant. He makes a lot of receivers relevant, and without Tyreek Hill, there's a lot of targets opened up. Juju can take a lot of those. I'll take Juju.
Well, I'll play devil's advocate. Juju's a bum. Give me Christian Kirk.
I should say
39, Rashad Bateman or Christian Kirk.
Ooh.
Heath.
Yeah, I'm going to go with Bateman. I am torn in between. Rashad Bateman's just going to be every bit as good as Marquise Brown, and it doesn't matter because the Ravens are going to run 700 times. But and I want to make the point, since we're talking, like, just throw this in there. I don't think that's a bad thing for Lamar Jackson if they do run it 700 times. Yeah. The year that he won the MVP, they had 596 rush attempts and only threw it 440 times. But I'll go with Bateman.
Rashad Bateman.
Yeah, this is Bateman. That upside is crazy.
Yeah, I agree. I'm on Bateman here. 40 is Claypool. Chase Claypool or Christian Kirk? Heath.
I will go with I'm gonna make the change right now. I'm moving Christian Kirk. No, Chase Claypool. No. I don't like either one of them at all. I'm sorry.
I say I am super down on Chase Claypool after being way too high on him last year. I like George Pickens a lot, so it's definitely Christian Kirk for me.
Yeah, I've never been high on Claypool, and George Pickens being added, it's Kirk for me all the way.
I mean, I'm team Deontay Johnson, so I can't stand play.
Yeah.
I mean, Christian Kirk. All right, Allen Robinson at 41. Heath. Robinson or Kirk?
I will go with Robinson as long as they don't sign Beckham.
Fair enough.
Great caveat,
Ryan.
but it's the reports on Robinson are doing things to me, so it's definitely Allen Robinson.
They're doing things to you. Right?
Yeah, I'm very excited for Allen Robinson this season.
Yeah, I can't believe we're even having this debate right now. That's so funny.
41. That feels ridiculous.
Allen Robinson a couple years ago was like a wide receiver 1 in like past couple years, and now we're talking about him with Christian Kirk. But
who we can blame for that? We will blame AJ Green and Julio Jones for that.
Oh, I was gonna say Matt Nagy.
Yeah, Matt Nagy. Yeah.
I too will take Robinson. All right, so I'll do 2 more. So wide receiver 43, Michael Gallup or Christian Kirk?
I will go with Gallup because I might start him in the second half of the season.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm gonna buy into the better offense, Michael Gallup.
Touch.
Yeah, the Cowboys got rid of Amari Cooper this offseason. Gallup's going to have a lot more targets opened up for him, and he might miss a bit of the season, but he should definitely play most of the season. I'll take Gallup in the better offense.
I think I would take Gallup
Very
here
close.
too, but it is close because I think there's just enough targets in that Dallas offense to where even the wide receiver 2 can top the wide receiver 1 in Jacksonville.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, I lied. I'm going to do 2 more. 44 is Russell Gage in Tampa or Christian Kirk. Heath.
So this is one where, and I haven't made enough changes yet. Early in the season, it's the same way early in the week during the season. My rankings are really probably too close to my projections. And as we get more into draft season, I'll move the guys up that I would rather draft. And I'd rather draft Christian Kirk than Russell Gage, but I think like median outcome right now, I'd take Russell Gage.
Ryan.
Yeah, it's Kirk for me.
Hutch.
Yeah, it's Kirk. When Godwin comes back, I think Gage is not going to be crazy relevant anymore.
I really am torn because I think they're very similar as players. Kirk being a little bit more electric, but Gage isn't going to have any attention on him, whereas Kirk's going to have more. Still think I would lean Kirk, but it is close. And I'll end with this one because I feel like he's everybody's favorite, one of their favorite rookie wide receivers now. Christian Kirk at wide receiver 42 or Treylon Burks at wide receiver 45. Heath.
Wow.
I hope that Treylon Burks is okay, first off.
Yeah.
He seems to be having a real problem getting through OTAs, and they don't want to talk about why. So I hope everything's okay with him. Assuming that it is, though, I'll take Burks. I don't think he's going to have anything close to like an AJ Brown type season. I don't think he's AJ Brown, but if they want to give him 10 handoffs and throw it to him 120 times, then I think he's probably going to be the best rookie.
Right.
Don't need to add anything. Treylon Burks.
Hutch.
Yeah, I think Heath wrapped it up perfectly. It's Treylon Burks.
To our good friend Britt Flynn, Treylon Burks. Take it away, Hutch.
All right, and wrapping up here, Joe's IDP stash. Look, guys, I don't want to read this name live again because I remember last time I tried to read a name live, it ended up bad for me. Someone else want to try this name because I can't.
Moisada Luakan.
Okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Because last time I was on, I don't know if it was last time I was on the show, but one of the recent times I was on the show, it was Jeff Swain, I believe tight end for the Titans.
Yeah.
I had never seen that name before spelled that way. So I said Geoff live on the live stream. I did. Yeah, and it was incredible. But yeah.
That is fantastic. And there's
amazing.
I think the only proper response to that is every time you say his name from this point forward, you are calling him.
Yeah, it's Geoff Swain. Every time I see his name now, like on Twitter or something, it's Geoff in my head.
I tried to tell him you were Heath, but he didn't buy into it.
Yeah. Everybody just says Keith.
Yeah, I bet.
Perfect. All right. So let's move on to the next horrible team we got to talk about. The Detroit Lions. Last year's record, they were 3-13-1. Got the same coach this year in Dan Campbell, and they got a new OC, Ben Johnson, and tight ends coach from 20 to 2021 in Detroit. And Anthony Lynn is fired midway through the season, and Campbell assumed the play caller duties. So Campbell looks like he's going to be the play caller for next year.
Minor point of correction. They didn't actually fire Lynn, did they? Didn't they just make him stand there and not call plays? I think he was just on. I think he was still on the sideline.
Was he? I don't know. He was relieved of some duties. That's all I know.
Wow, that's even better.
I think Dan Campbell took over play calling duties, and Anthony Lynn was just hanging out. I mean, still.
And I said he was fired.
I thought they cut bait with him.
Fired after the season, right?
Yes.
After second, I'm sorry.
Yes, Campbell took over play calling midseason.
And
then he was fired after the year, but he just had to stand there.
I didn't think he made it through last season, but all right, fair enough.
All right,
sorry.
So you're good, Heath. Yeah, good correction. So players with most fantasy upside: Josh is Jameson Williams, and Ryan has his teammate Amon-Ra St. Brown's interesting. And then player who's the biggest trap for fantasy football this year, Josh is TJ Hockenson. And Ryan said, is there a trap based on ADP? I'll say DJ Chark. All right. And then questions for Heath here for the Detroit Lions. If there's one player in this team you have to leave your draft with, it's who?
Not. But I want to go back to the most fantasy upside thing because that's more interesting.
This one's really interesting.
Was there a rule that you guys were not allowed to say DeAndre Swift?
I think
I initially had Swift punched in. Yeah. I did. Then I was looking at ADP, and right now he's at RB 10.
Oh, I don't think he can beat his ADP by that much. But I was just thinking, like,
he could be a top 5 running. That's kind of where we.
That's where we lean with our upside.
Yeah,
because I completely
kind of like, biggest trap being, if their ADP is really high, but you think that's maybe more their ceiling, then they're more of a trap.
Yeah,
that kind of thing. Because I had Swift because I truly do think his upside lies in the top, 3 to 5.
Yep.
He's just got to score touchdowns. I just don't know that the Lions offense is capable of scoring that many touchdowns. I
think the Lions improved this year. I really do.
Oh,
they have literally the same team, like offensive line and everything. And their offensive line got worse from 2020 to 2021. I understand there were some injuries.
They needed time, Josh.
And Decker.
They're just gelling. They were gelling.
And also, you got to remember,
Yeah.
like, they didn't really have a
This ain't
Amon-Ra St.
Dr.
Brown.
Scholes. They're not gelling like that. Let's calm down here.
And Dan Campbell didn't even have a regular offseason. Like,
Yeah.
I mean, legitimate first year with the team, and they usually get extra time to be with their team. And he had to have that weird offseason.
Yeah.
I think they're going to be one of the sweetheart picks to be over on their Vegas total. I don't know if it's 4.5 or 5.5, but
yeah, I'd bet the over on that.
Yeah, for me,
I
with
still
the
think their
upside,
ceiling is 6. I don't think
I
it's
say-
much bigger than that.
I think they get to play. I think they maybe get to play the Jets.
Oh,
And no. So I'm supposed to give you a player. I would like to draft Jared Goff in 2 quarterback leagues.
Yeah.
How's
Actually,
that?
If only Joe was here right now.
I like it.
Yeah, because it's really important in 2 quarterback leagues to have guys who are not going to lose their job.
Yeah.
If you
Sure.
wait on quarterback and you take 3 of them late or something like that, it's really important to have guys that are not going to lose their job. Jared Goff's not going to lose his job, and he's got pretty good weapons, and he's been a top 12 quarterback before.
exactly.
Last 2 years, he's been over 67% completion percentage.
Yeah.
He just needs to find the end zone. That's
Problem
really
is
what it
his
comes
yards
down to.
per attempt is doing this. It's going
Yeah,
down.
because he just doesn't throw
every year.
deep. He's so scared to throw deep. He just doesn't.
Well,
do it.
and that's, you go out and you get someone like Jamison Williams who can take a top off of defense. Same thing with DJ Chark.
I was saying
You
DJ Chark.
expect that yards per attempt to go up. So it's just going to be a matter of, are they going to call those types of plays? And are both of those guys healthy? Because a lot of people may not remember, Chark got hurt last year too. He's coming back from an injury. Jamison Williams tore his ACL in the title game. So it's going to be a long road ahead. But with that upside, I think that lies with Jamison Williams, we could see an Amon-Ra type rise in the second part of the season, which could vault Jamison Williams into that, top 25 range if he really hits the way that Amon-Ra did last year.
Yeah.
But I agree with the Goff thing. When you look at it, if he can just improve his touchdown numbers, and you mentioned they got players to kind of alleviate an issue in his game, you're looking at a guy who could easily maybe crack the top 15 again. And Heath put it perfectly. That's the player you want on your team in a 2 QB league, because his ADP, even in a 2 QB league, is basically giving him away. But job security, because if you're waiting till the end of your draft and you're drafting a guy like Marcus Mariota, there's no guarantee Marcus Mariota starts. I think, Hutch, you just did a video on Drew Lock for Football Guys that the camp reports right now are Geno Smith might be beating him out to begin with. And so there's just
Geno
so much
Smith might be
going
beating
on.
him right now. Yeah, there's been a lot of reports saying Geno Smith has the early edge on Drew Lock right now, which is pretty sad for the Seattle Seahawks. But yeah, I like this Jared Goff call a lot. I mean, he's not the Detroit Lions did not invest in a rookie like at all, and not highly in this draft. I honestly thought they might go Willis at 2 overall. I really thought they could have, but they didn't. They kept Jared Goff, and I mean, look at the offense around Goff right now. I mean, you guys have said it all. I mean, you got Hockenson at tight end, you got Williams, Chark, Amon-Ra St. Brown, Swift coming out of the backfield, Jamal Williams right behind him, and you've got a growing offensive line here. Like, there's a lot of pieces here for Jared Goff to be successful. And if he can just use them to his advantage, he could definitely be a very fantasy relevant asset, especially with the explosiveness that Jameson Williams and DJ Chark have. Like, he doesn't necessarily have to throw deep bombs to them. If he gives them a screen pass, they can take it far.
Exactly.
I agree.
So I love Jared Goff in a 2 quarterback league. And for Dynasty too, I think he's a solid 1-year rental, because obviously in 2023, they'll probably be looking for their quarterback of their future. Yeah. But I think
they win the division.
Yeah. If you're really going like a 1-year rental kind of thing, this could be interesting. I think Jared Goff is definitely a good.
You're really buying into Dan Campbell and his knee biting philosophy there, Heath?
Yeah.
Big fan of Deandre Swift. I think the offensive line is going to be really good this year. They were worse last year, but I think that there's too much talent this year. I think or too much talent to be that bad again this year.
Yeah,
I was gonna say, and they have the pieces. Like Ragnow is a top center when he's healthy. Decker, we've seen as a top left tackle, and Sewell, he owned that right tackle spot. I remember there were some reports like coming out, learning to play right tackle versus left tackle, this and that, etc. Like, he owned it. He was their best run blocking lineman last year, and that's what this team wants to do. They run the ball over 40% of the time, and if Campbell replicates some of what they did in New Orleans, they're going to continue to run the football, and they're going to get Swift involved, and Jamal Williams is going to have a place too.
Yeah. So
DeAndre Swift was at like what was it? I had it in my notes, but DeAndre Swift's points per game numbers would put him near a top 5 running back. Yeah. So
yeah, in the beginning of the season, he was crazy. Like even sharing a lot of time with Jamal Williams, he was just getting so much volume in this offense because they run the ball a ton. They were doing a lot of quick, short passes to their running backs, and DeAndre Swift was just taking tons of volume and making good work with it.
I love DeAndre Swift, and
he's great.
All in on him going into last year. But just to be like honest about it, I was excited about him partially because of Anthony Lynn. Mm-hmm. Not because I think Anthony Lynn's good, but Anthony Lynn's awesome for running back touches. Yep. And the target rate of running backs after Campbell took over was not the same as when Lynn was calling plays. And I don't think we should really expect it to be the same because nobody does what Anthony Lynn does. Most coaches don't do what Anthony Lynn does. So I don't think he has the same receiving upside, but I also don't think he'll be as inefficient as a rusher as he was. I mean, there's data that looks like Jamal Williams was actually a better runner than he was last year, and I just don't think that's true. So I think Swift will be better as a runner. Yeah.
So let's talk about the player you're most avoiding in fantasy football right now. Talk about Amon-Ra St. Brown at the 5'6" turn.
Well, that's what I wanted to ask you is what I don't have his underdog ADP. So like a little, again, this is another one where later I'm fine with it. I was just trying to find somebody where I was lower than ADP, and at pick 60, I'm not very excited about him. But he might be a little later on underdog as well.
Yeah, this is 61 on Fantasy Pros.
I said what I'm going to find interesting is
underdog. He's on 71.
Okay,
that's closer.
That's more. And this is and I'm looking at the ADP for like the past week of drafters. So this is like really up to date. So yeah, James Williams is scaring people from Amon-Ra.
Well, I was going to say, and it's not, and I also think now a lot of the people playing underdog right now are a lot of our friends and family in the fantasy industry. And the fantasy industry, I feel like is split down the middle. You have a maybe even more 60-40 where you have a group trying to talk Amon back up, which is me. I don't see the huge drop off in targets that others do, but man, there is a very vocal group that is saying he will not see 120 targets again. And I think that's what's dragging the ADP down.
I think it's like, I've got him at 118 in terms of projections. It's just, he's not like, if you look at his full season stats from last year, he had 912 yards and 5 touchdowns. Mm-hmm. We're not drafting him to do what he did last year. He's got to be better than that if he's gonna be worth a pick at the 5-6 turn. He was worth second round the final 6 weeks of the season, but we've all agreed that's not what we're going to expect. I just don't know in his particular role. I really liked him coming in last year because he was so mature as a player and really good at the things that they asked him to do, work in that short area of the field.
Yep.
But I think that's a pretty low upside role if you don't have 140 targets.
And that's fair because I was going to say the upside is there because we saw it with Goff to Cooper Kupp.
Right.
And obviously, ARSB is not Cooper Kupp. I'm not making that connection whatsoever. But I will slightly disagree where in the 5th, 6th round, he's typically going to be the 25th, 26th wide receiver coming off the board. The numbers, I think you and I seem to have him at pretty similar numbers, even to what he had last year. That would put him right around top 20 wide receiver. I'm fine with that. I'm fine. I understand you want the upside, and there's going to be weeks of upside, those weeks when DeAndre Swift or TJ Hockenson don't play. But slow and steady will win the race for me for my wide receiver 2, wide receiver 3, depending on how I'm built my team. So I'm good with ARSB as my wide receiver 2. Absolutely.
Yeah, I kind of look at it this way, like, because Heath, you mentioned 118 targets. I have him at 117, and Ryan, we were talking before the show. I think you said 116. So like, we're all kind of right around the same route when it comes to his target share. But you're putting him in a vacuum, right? Like when we're doing these projections, we're not expecting everybody to get hurt, and that's just not the reality. People are going to get hurt, which is going to take these mediocre projections for maybe a wide receiver 40. That only gets 10.1 yards per reception and 5 touchdowns. And then it's going to move him up like 15 spots. And then it becomes worth the investment, even though in hindsight, it probably wasn't, because normally that would be a wide receiver 40.
Well, I think, and that's what I say. Like if I've got somebody projected at wide receiver 40 and they play 17 games, they'll probably be a top 30 wide receiver.
Yeah. Just because nobody does.
They're not top 30 on a per game basis.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you got to remember, too, like, in this offense right now, I mean, James Williams is hurt. DJ Chark is hurt. They are both coming off injuries. if they are, I mean, I think DJ Chark will probably start week 1, but if James Williams is not starting week 1, there's still a lot of opportunity for Amon-Ra St. Brown early to take advantage and have a great start. So what I'm honestly doing, I'm actually like, I'm not heavily targeting, but I'm actually drafting him. And I'm looking for a hot start if James Williams isn't starting week 1. Then I'm looking to sell for when James. That's what I'm.
That's
really
kind of the way that I did my projections. I essentially split them right down the middle. Chark is going to be the week 1 to 8 guy, and Williams is going to be the 9 to 18 week guy. Like, Williams is, I don't see how he's going to be able to be ready by September, having torn his ACL in January. I understand crazier things have happened. We've seen it. But for somebody that relies so much on his speed, I feel like it's still, and he's not like a well-built guy. He's only $179. Like, he's a stick. So,
this is working some of that in, right? Because if we thought Jameson Williams was playing week 1 at 100%, I don't think.
Amon-Ra would be at like 92 targets for me.
Amon-Ra would be a top 36.
Yeah, he'd be under 100 targets.
Right. We're already factoring in that Jameson Williams is not going to be ready for the start of the year. If he is, then this is a massive overprice.
Fail on all of our parts.
Yeah.
Right. So, I would not kill ARSB. I would kill DJ Chark.
I mean, fair. I would too, honestly. He's only on a 1-year deal. So.
All right. So let's move on here. Let's wrap the Detroit Lions and let's move on to, and then we'll move on to the third bad team. We're going to talk about the Texans. Very excited for that. So quickly, Heath, we did talk about James Williams a little bit for this season, but how are you looking at him for dynasty purposes? Because he's your rookie to care about the most.
He's part of that. Like, the way I look at it in rookie drafts is that Breece Hall's one, and so much so that he's pretty much in his own tier. Even if you don't really need a running back, you should just take Breece Hall and then trade him. That's one. And then there's really 6 or 7 guys that I think you could make an argument for as number 2. And it's one of the reasons that I would prefer to just trade back if I have 2 or 3 to 6 or 7, because I don't care that much. I've got him 5th amongst the wide receivers, but right there with Burks and Olave. I think he might, if he was the best wide receiver in this class, it wouldn't really surprise me that much.
Yeah.
He's one of the guys, those wide receivers and Walker and Hall, that I would not just trade for a random, I don't know what it is, 2023 first.
Yeah, like this is.
Yeah.
Yeah, Jameson Williams, he's interesting though, because a lot of people like talk about his speed, but he's not just like really fast. Like, he's game-changing fast. Like, on the field as college, like, I think it was his first touchdown for Alabama. It was like a 90-yarder. He clocked in on the field at 23 miles an hour, and only 2 players in the NFL since 2016 have clocked in at 23 miles per hour or faster. Raheem Mostert and Tyreek Hill, that's it. Like, Jameson Williams is instantly going to be one of the fastest players in the NFL, and like Tyreek Hill level kind of speed. Like, that could change. I mean, Tyreek Hill has changed the game with his speed. Like, Jameson Williams could do something similar for an NFL team.
So, as we were saying, Jared Goff in a 2 QB league.
Yeah.
I just hope Jameson Williams doesn't hurt his neck looking back at the underthrows from Jared Goff.
Yeah.
Fair point. Fair point.
All right. So let's talk about Joe's sleepers here in his IDB stash. Joe's biggest sleeper here based on current ADP is DJ Chark. The Lions, he says the Lions suck and everyone's being drafted where they should be or too high. Ceiling with Chark is much higher than wide receiver 62, but health is the biggest concern. And Joe's IDP stash is Alex Anzalone.
Great job.
Anzalone?
Yep.
Okay, thank you. Solid piece for the New Orleans. For New Orleans now in Detroit. Yeah, sorry. Yeah, fast linebacker, and it's a good run stuffer. So watch out for him. And finally, the last garbage team, the Houston Texans, last season record 4-13. New coach with Lovie Smith and new OC Pep Hamilton. He was the QB coach in 2021. So players with the fantasy upside, Josh talking about Brevin Jordan, and Ryan likes John Mechie. Before the draft, this would have been Nico Collins, but then John Mechie got drafted. And the player who's the biggest trap, Josh said, does anyone really have a big ADP so high that you're avoiding them? I mean, like, the Texans, no one's being drafted very high. Like, no one's being drafted very high. But Ryan really, even though he's being drafted really low, Ryan is not a big fan of Dameon Pierce right now.
This was just me wanting to put a player in every box. So it's not that I'm not a fan of Pierce. I just am going to caution people against thinking he's going to be a workhorse.
Why do you hate Dameon Pierce?
I like Dameon Pierce. I actually like targeting him.
It's a long story.
I don't like Dameon Pierce.
Yeah. It's a long story rivalry between me and Dameon Pierce in that
Well,
I
a rivalry.
don't watch college football and didn't know who he was. Completely joking. I mean, I don't watch college football, but I didn't know who he was. My biggest concern,
Amazing.
my largest concern with him is the hype train is already starting about all of the opportunity in Houston. One, they're not a great team. I don't know how much they're going to be able to control the clock running the football. And two, I don't think they're just going to give up on this committee approach that they fell into last year and they re-signed all of those guys. And I just don't see a situation where he's just a flat out workhorse. I think I saw a stat that he never saw more than 10 carries in college or something like that. Like,
Never topped 600 yards in a season at Florida. He popped last year with 13 touchdowns, but outside of that, there is literally nothing spectacular in this guy's profile. Everybody's all on board because of opportunity. Well, Marlon Mack got eased back in after the Achilles. What happens if we get old Marlon Mack? I mean, granted, you're running behind a much worse offensive line.
I think you're going to get old Marlon Mack.
I mean,
one way or the other, it's either old Marlon Mack or it's old Marlon Mack.
Yeah, like I'm not.
Fair enough.
The good thing is here, like he is definitely like very risky. Like I don't expect anything from him. But where he's going in drafts, I think just because the upside is there for the point where he can be a lead back.
But we're also talking about this in the top of the summer, right?
Like that's the point I was
going to be drafting in August. Pierce's ADP is probably going to usurp.
It's probably going to be higher,
currently at 41. Yeah,
in which where I will talk
himself into a rookie Pierce who's just not that good.
Yeah, I will bow if his ADP goes much.
I think I've got him at RB 30.
Okay. His ADP is 56, so clearly
I would be drafting him now.
Immense value. Yeah.
Yeah, I like him as a value. So then questions for Heath here for the Texans. If there's one player on this team you have to leave your draft with, it's
this one's actually true.
Easy.
Brandon Cooks.
Yes.
Easy. Brandon Cooks.
Every single year.
Yep.
And I know there was that one year where he had a couple of concussions and one of them was really bad and he missed like 3 games and was terrible the rest of the year.
Yep.
And every other year of his career, he catches 75 passes for 1,000 or 1,100 yards and scores 6 or 7 touchdowns.
He
and
is
beats
a different
ADP
version
by
of
40
Mike
spots.
Yeah.
He really is.
Yeah,
and then we
last
drafted
year
him in the
actually was
7th and 8th
his
round
highest
again.
target share.
Yep.
I think last year was his highest target share on any of those years. He had almost a 25% target share.
It was his least efficient year. I know that, except for that one year with the Rams winning everything.
Yeah,
like
that was a rough season.
Yeah.
And you tweet about Brandon Cooks, and everybody's like, "Yeah, but he's just one concussion away." And I'm like, you guys have been saying that for 3 years now.
Well, it to a lesser extent reminds me of early Keenan Allen. Everybody just wanted to bury him after those rough years, and it's like, let's just calm down a little bit. So
yeah, and I mean he's been a top 15 receiver. I mean he's been a top 20 receiver with 4 different teams in his career. Like he's always there. He's always putting up fantasy points. I think he's just like a bit of a poor man's Mike Evans. Like Mike Evans,
he's
I think
nomad Mike Evans, and obviously their games are completely different. But he's
their games are completely different.
But he doesn't score the kind of touchdowns that Evans does.
Yeah, I'm more talking like the consistently, like always there, consistently, always underrated. But yeah, Brandon Cooks, you gotta leave your draft with Brandon Cooks every year. Like he's always going in the 6th, 7th round or even later in most drafts, and like he's just gonna put up a top 20 season. He's always right there.
So Heath, I know you're early in your projections, but I'm way higher on him, I think, than almost everybody on the Football Guys consensus. Where do you have Evans right now?
Evans or Cooks?
Or I apologize, Cooks. Yeah.
You're gonna really like this because
we're not allowed to talk about good teams today.
Yeah.
Cooks is one of the players that I have to actually move down when I transfer from projections to rankings.
I bet.
Not because I don't want to draft him as high as the projections, but just because he's like 60 spots before everybody else has him. Brandon Cooks is basically tied with Keenan Allen for wide receiver 6 in my projections right now.
Okay. He's 13 for me. And so
and here's the reason, like, just if you're trying to understand the reason why, and I'm not saying draft him as wide receiver.
I'm not. I'm all for it.
But I want to explain like in my process the reason why. You talked about it. Cook's target share spiked last year. I think with almost all rookie quarterbacks, their second year is at least a little bit better.
Yeah.
And Cook's last year efficiency was about as bad as it's ever been in his career. And so I'm forecasting a slight regression back to his career norms in terms of his efficiency. But I don't think that John Mechie is taking targets away from him. Yeah. And so I've still got him with a huge target share. And so like maybe I'm a little high on the targets or a little high on the efficiency, but I think if he stays healthy, he's going to be like this might be the best year of his career.
And the big thing's going to be touchdowns because he's never been a high touchdown producer. I think his most is maybe 8, but I think he averages like 5 touchdowns a year.
Yeah, I'll look. I don't
And that's what that ultimately here. What's up, Hutch?
He hasn't had double-digit touchdowns in a year, right?
No, he never has. Exactly.
Sure. I'm looking
back. And those are the types of, points in a player's game that elevates them into that, top 5, top 10 echelon.
I have an update on touchdowns yet. He has a 9 in his career. That was in 2015 with New Orleans. Over the past 4 seasons, he has not topped 6 touchdowns.
Yep. Exactly. So and I know Mills had 16, I believe, last year. And that was in 11 games starting where he averaged, I think it was, what was my notes, 228 per game in his starts, which again, you expect this offense to get a little better.
Well,
I'm not saying it's going to be great by any means, but
like that's a major historical trend though, is rookie quarterbacks and low touchdown rates. Even the guys who put out a good yard.
I mean, Lawrence only had 12 touchdown passes.
Lawrence. What was his touchdown rate? Like, wasn't like,
well, remember Kyler was like 3%.
Yep.
Yeah. So let's move on here. Player you're most avoiding on the Texans. You don't have anything in the doc, so I don't know who your player is, but this.
I couldn't think of another player on the Texans who was being drafted high enough to avoid.
There's no one.
I'll nominate somebody. Royce Freeman. It currently is a UDFA. Like there's 105 players ranked in Fantasy Pros EDP, and he's not even one of those 105. So just stay the hell away.
There you go.
Yeah. I mean, this backfield is a pretty good example. I mean, it depends on where Dameon Pierce's ADP is for me, honestly. Like, I'd be interested in him, but honestly, this offensive line's horrible. I mean, we want Davis Mills to take a step forward, but we don't expect him to be like a top 10 NFL quarterback next year. Like, we're not looking for that out of him.
4 300-yard games last year.
He did. Yeah, he was actually pretty impressive, but I don't think we see him taking that massive leap and making this offense great. Like, this offense is still going to be mediocre at best. Like, this backfield is just going to be something to kind of avoid.
I'm not so much worried about the offense as I am the defense. I don't think they're going to be able to
they're not also not
compete in a lot of games because that defense is bad. I think the offense could actually be a very decent offense. Obviously not great, but I think they could compete. I just don't think they're ever going to have the opportunity to. So,
yeah. And then rookie to care about most for dynasty purposes, Heath, you got 2 players here. You gonna talk about both? I mean, we talked about Dameon Pierce already. If you want to talk more about Dameon Pierce.
I put both Mechie and Pierce because neither one I'm really that interested in reaching for. But I do think that either one, like Mechie's probably going to be more of if you have a couple taxi squad spots and you don't have to use him this year, and maybe next year he's got a little bit bigger role, or maybe there finally is the Brandon Cook 6-week injury at the end of the year, and then Mechie has some value. But Pierce is a guy who could have production early in year 1 and then again turn into a better draft pick in 2023 just because somebody needs a running back. Both of those guys, I think probably the end of the second, early third, and rookie drafts, I'm pretty happy to grab them.
Mechie is ADP, and a lot of the rookie drafts I've been seeing is off the charts. Early second, late first still. So
he's jumping.
I am a person who loves John Mechie and cannot stand where his ADP is because I'd love to get him where you're saying, Heath, and it's just not happening.
Yeah, I've got him.
Mechie's been going like mid to late second.
Yeah.
I haven't done one in about a month, but even post-draft right away, I saw someone actually trade up to 110 to get John Mechie.
I think that's the thing. First off, don't do that, folks, because
don't do that. No.
After you get past the top 8, anybody could go 9, 10, 11, 12. And that's because none of them are that good.
Yep.
Or anybody could happen to fall to 24. Like I've seen, prime example is the tight end McBride.
Yes.
Like he goes all over the place. He falls into the third sometimes.
I love McBride.
Early in the second sometimes.
I traded up to the 4-2 to get McBride in a league where I thought I was done drafting. I thought I was done. My picks were over, and I went back in just to see where everybody had shook out because my last pick was in the second round. And at 4-2, the guy hadn't picked yet, and McBride was there. So I quickly offered a third next year. I was like, look, take a third, give me Trey McBride. And he said, yep. I was like, all right, perfect. So,
that's just stealing.
That's a steal.
That's not fair. That's not fair.
Yeah, I mean, you got to be willing to wait on young tight ends, which I understand that. And
Especially with Zach
apparently
Ertz
people are
already
just
there right now.
So, yeah.
You're gonna have
And
to
I
wait.
think that's
but
what scares a lot of people because Hurts just signed a 3-year extension.
he did.
And that's the thing. Like, has Cole Kmet lost value over the past 2 years?
Thank you for bringing up Cole Kmet because it's a show tradition. So
I think
I'm gonna take the
Trey
lead, Joe,
McBride's path probably looks a lot like Cole Kmet's, like useless in year 1. Year
And
two,
year two.
he has some success, but Ertz is still stealing the red zone. And then
year 3.
This is a very anti-Cole
Except
Kmet
he has
show.
Kyler Murray. Yeah.
you
I
guys
mean,
hate
why we're assuming Kyler's still there. Like, he's got Kyler as quarterback instead of Justin
Right.
Fields, who's been struggling.
right.
Yeah.
Yes, this is
All
a
right.
very anti-Cole Kmet show, Heath.
That is
Yeah,
very
we know
interesting.
this. Every time I've tried to bring up Cole Kmet, it is not happening.
I'm
Especially with
just
Joe.
going
Joe
to
is
go
the-
ahead and make a bold Cole Kmet
No,
Do it.
don't
Do
do
it.
it.
prediction.
Oh, let's go, Heath. Come on.
Cole Kmet over Pat Fryermuth this year and in Dynasty.
No. I'm going to make a equally bold Cole Kmet. Cole Kmet under 80 targets.
Okay.
All right, interesting. All right, so let's move on to Joe's biggest sleeper and IDP stash, and then we'll wrap up the show. Joe's biggest sleeper based on current ADP right now, we talked about it a little bit. It's Dameon Pierce. There's legitimate zero competition in the backfield, and he is in the RB 50s right now. Free shot in the last round of your draft. I mean, I completely agree.
Oh, 100%.
We've talked
like
about
I said.
him. Yeah, he's free. And there's zero competition. He could definitely step up and make it. And then Joe's IDP stash is Christian Kirksey / Kamu Gruber-Hill. Did I say those names right?
Yes.
Sure.
Okay.
For sure.
If Kirksey stay healthy, he is dangerous, and Gruber-Hill has major big games. When he's hot, you want him on your team because he won't cool down for 3 to 4 games. And then that's it, guys.
We did it. We got through the 3 worst teams in the NFL last year.
Thank you for carrying this show, Heath.
These will not
Thank
be
you,
the
Heath.
3 worst teams
Thank
in the
you,
NFL
Heath.
this year.
I agree.
Well, you know what? If Howard Bender, who was on with us for the first show last year, would have said that too, he would have been wrong because the Jaguars repeated as the worst team.
Oh, no, I think
Yeah.
Jacksonville definitely will be. I think that's really better. No, Jacksonville is going to be probably the worst again.
I think Houston's defense is going to put them into a very tough spot as well. So I think Heath and I agree on Detroit improvement for sure, though.
Yeah, it'll be. Yeah, I think Detroit actually improves a lot. I think it'll be a competition between the Texans, the Jaguars, and I think the Giants are also there too.
Well,
I think the Giant. I don't trust Daniel Jones. I don't trust Saquon Barkley to stay on the field. I don't trust the
Save something for
receivers.
next week. Jeez.
Sorry, yeah, the Giants are up here. I don't trust the Giants at all. I think they could definitely be there. The Bears too.
you know
If
who could be
Justin Fields
sneaky
really
bad?
struggles, the Bears could be there.
The Steelers.
Ooh.
They might just actually be bad.
That's interesting.
Let's also
Then
not
they're
forget.
really going to regret Kenny Pickett.
I say let's not forget the Falcons as well. They're
Well,
not
yeah,
good.
Falcons and
Oh my
Panthers
God,
both.
they're gonna be so bad. The Falcons are gonna be so bad.
Sam Darnold's actually going to start
The Panthers.
again.
Yeah, he's gonna start again.
So there's
That's
two, so there's 2 wins for the Falcons. No, I'm joking.
I'm telling you, Desmond Ridder, offensive rookie of the year.
Sam Darnold should send half of his check to Gardner Minshew just to say, I'm sorry that you didn't get as many chances as me. That's totally unfair. They're paying me all this money and you've got to sit on the bench. You should be playing. Here you go.
Oh man.
There's your clip for Christian because I agree with that. Minshew magic all the way.
That means Philly's got to trade him.
Oh, you're damn right they do.
No, it said they had some offers this offseason and
They
they
wanted to hold on to him.
No, they want to now maybe I think there's a chance because I'm kind of a little bit of a Carson Strong guy. I think
I am
there's a
as well.
chance that he's good enough. And they're like, you know what? We're okay if Carson Strong's our backup quarterback. And then they trade Minshew.
Yeah, I think getting him into camp
Yeah.
and seeing what his health's going to look like was a big part of that. I completely agree. So, all right, Hutch, take us home. Or
All right,
Josh,
everybody.
take us home. I don't even know who's taking us home.
Josh, you can do it. You can do it. Go ahead.
I can do it. Go for it. Heath, once again, thank you for showing up. Hutch,
Yeah.
I appreciate you filling in the last minute. It's been a pleasure always to have Hutch on, and Heath, it's been a blast to chat with you and get to know you a little bit. And I actually have a really good friend of mine who I started Club Fantasy with, who stopped helping me with Club Fantasy because he got a job with CBS Sports. He works in the customer service department. He says he's met you once. We'll talk afterwards. But anyway, he's like, oh, you'll love Heath. He's great. So good times. But thank you both. Remind us both where they can find you guys and your work and everything you're working on. Heath, we'll start with you.
Yeah, I think probably the most important thing to me right now is our Dynasty landing page. You go to CBS Sports, you go to the fantasy football page, you go to the top right corner, and you see Dynasty Central. A couple of years ago, we didn't really have Dynasty coverage, and now we've got rankings, tiers, mock drafts, all those things. So that's
Awesome.
Go there. You'll find what I'm doing this time of year.
Awesome. Very cool. Hutch.
Yeah, you all can go follow me on Twitter at TYFMNFL. I make videos for Football Guys Weekly every Tuesday on their YouTube channel. I write articles for DLF. And check out the Young Fantasy Mind Football podcast, pretty much anywhere you get your podcasts.
Very cool. All right, and as you see with this show, our look inside team previews, the article forms are in full swing as well. On Monday, Ryan's article on Travis Etienne and the Jaguars just dropped. Wednesday, you'll have one from the Lions. Friday, you'll have one from Steve Lawson, one of our newest writers, on Brandon Cooks and the Texans, who we talked a lot about on this show. And we're working on some other short-form YouTube content with one of our newest contributors, Joe Pepe, who we announced last week joining us. So really excited about that. Next week, also we'll be pre-recording once again. Yep. Schedule is just kind of getting away for everybody. Unfortunately, Ryan, I don't believe you're going to be with us next week.
No? Going home. Okay. Going home for the weekend.
Which is why Hutch is going to be joining us once again.
There you go.
And which is apparently becoming an annual tradition where Hutch hosts the show when we bring on Fantasy Alarm's Howard Bender to help us break down his hometown team, the New York Jets, the New York Giants, and of course, the Sam Darnold-led Carolina Panthers.
Okay, this show wasn't so bad.
I was just going to say.
Yeah. Exactly. Like, I mean, like, it's just
suck it,
bad.
Bender.
Yeah. Wait, hold on. What were the teams last? Didn't we preview teams with Bender last year? They're also pretty bad.
Well, he was the first show.
Jaguars,
so.
It was the
Jets, he was the first one. The
and,
Jaguars, the Jets, and
Houston.
I can't remember.
And Houston.
Was it Houston again? Okay, there you go.
I think it was Houston.
So yeah, we saved one of them for him next week. There you go. But anyway, Heath, thank you so much. Man. Hutch, thank you so much. This has been No Pun Intended. You can follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram at Club Fantasy FFL. The URL, clubfantasyffl.com. Stay tuned next week. Once again, we are pre-recording, but you can find us on our YouTube page, youtube.com/Club Fantasy FFL, with special guest Howard Bender of Fantasy Alarm as we preview the Jets, the Giants, and the Panthers. We will see everybody next week. Have a good one, guys.